Hey everybody, welcome to the Anthony and Todd Show. I'm your host Trevor.
And I'm Vincent.
And today we're going to be taking a look at the latest collaboration album between Quelle Chris and Chris Keys, Innocent Country 2. Quelle Chris is a Detroit rapper and producer and had one of the most underrated three-peats in recent history with Being You's Great, I Wish I Could Be You More Often back in 2017, Everything's Fine with his wife Jean Grey in 2018, and Guns from last year, 2019. Chris Keys, his collaborator here, is an Oakland producer who I think is most well known for his work with Quelle. Their first collaboration, Innocent Country 1, or just Innocent Country, came out in 2015.
One innocent country, just one. There is two separate countries that are innocent. Both of these countries are innocent because their hand does not fit in the glove, and the glove does not fit. You cannot acquit.
Quelle Chris recently tweeted that Chris Keys played 99% of everything you hear on this album.
Chris Keys, since we've just talked about his production, I think he does a really good job at moments like Living Happy, Sacred Safe, Mirage. I think all highlight Quelle really well with these amazing keys. This is like a very piano heavy album for majority of it. Other times it's kind of like scratchy and grimy for some weird reason that really doesn't blend, and we'll get into that in a moment. But I think for the most part, Chris Keys upped his production and his like collaboration with Quelle, where he feels more prominent in this. It seems like he has more creativity in this. It feels like more of a collaborative album than just another Quelle Chris project with like one producer only. Well, Chris Keys is great on this, and Quelle's verses are true to his form. They're very weird, offbeat, kind of quiet. I find the biggest problem to this is not really what Quelle is saying in individual moments, but how they blend together. I think the first couple tracks on this album link up with the last couple of tracks on this album and bring this like optimistic, essentially acknowledging the face value of danger that the world is in, or like problems that the world's in, and maybe just accepting your fate in that area, and how much like finding happiness, your own mirage in a sorts, like works. But I find like some other moments where like Quelle Chris is talking about race and his ancestry to be not bad, they just don't fit. And then he gets into some like other absurdist, like wackier moments that don't really tie well together with the serious moments he's had, and that's something he's managed to do really well before, is work absurdity into his music and have it be political or conceptual. And on this, it doesn't blend as well. I think the best moment where it, like one of his like interludes or something that blends absurdity with a point, is moments where Josh Gondelman is talking about how if you don't make a mistake now, you can make a mistake later. You can make a different mistake and then fix them both, and how like life is just an opportunity to fix past mistakes and learn from them. Like with this very like loud explosive noise in the background bursting, I find was fun, and it's only around for a minute, and it cements like an idea pretty well that ties into previous tracks. But like tracks after that really don't have to do with life, they more have to do with like concepts of race, which isn't a bad thing. It's just like this album pivots to not only a different thematic presence, but to a different sound presence. Like the character of these tracks are different. Like moments like Bottle Black Powered by the Business are very loud and scratchy, and same thing for Grease in the Elbows is like more moody, dark, kind of grimy. I just feel like some of these moments don't add up in the grander scheme of things when you compare them to Black Twitter, Sudden Depth, Graphic Bleeds Out. Like these are brighter, more happy, very optimistic moments with the production. They seem almost kind of storybook like, and they have power to their presence, and like a good, just like a very basic but a very solid message about human nature in general. I find that like certain tracks can be repetitive. Like Quelle's done this before on like Being You's Great with Dumb for Brains, where he just repeats Dumb for Brains over and over, but there's a type of absurdity to it where it's very intentional. And this time, like on tracks like Grease from the Elbows, it makes it better. Like the hooks just like go on for way too long than they need to, and they generally just don't work. And it seems like the track thinks like the hook is its own verse when it really isn't.
Yeah, I think looking back at Quelle's like older discography, we're looking at like Being You Is Great or Everything's Fine and Guns. Like the transformation between 2017 Quelle and 2019 Quelle was like very subtle, but also his personality and absurdity like are still present when talking about more serious subjects like on guns. I'm not saying that he should continue to make concept albums, but that seems to be like really where his strengths are. I think some of the messages that we're getting in this album contradict themselves very heavily. Looking at like intro recap or outro honest, the first 2 tracks on this project, we're looking at the album almost like it's a TV series. Like the Innocent Country 1 was like season 1, and now we're getting into like, this is like the moment you've all been waiting for, Innocent Country 2, and made it seem like it was some like big grand event. And then Quelle's verse on outro honest is like very much so about like a girl that only wants to date him because of like his race, because that like gives her some sort of social power. But then the whole track ends with like a very comical answering machine like message where Quelle sends this girl straight to voicemail, and she sees him like tweeting after he didn't pick up his phone, so like she knows that he's there. And it's like a very funny moment, but it doesn't set the album up for success like in following through with its theme. Immediately after all of this, like there's like very comical work, a very serious verse, and then like more comedy skit.
After he's talking about getting gaslit by this girl and how she's like caused so many problems in his life and how she's just like a terrible thing for him, he just goes into a comedy segment. Like
exactly, it's very weird. Like he's able to be absurd and his own like personality on his older like projects, but it's just like this is not how he ever did it before, and it doesn't work. So like we get into like 2 what I find to be like very contrasting themes, and they're not like contrasting by nature. It is the themes of like not worrying about the future, like not worrying about your own like life, like we'll find happiness like even in troubled times, and then the theme of like being proud of your heritage and ancestry, specifically for him, like his black heritage and like being proud of being black. And that's great. And everything, like those 2 themes work, but they don't work together. There's no consistency here. Like we get past the moments skit, and then we get to the extremely grimy Bottle Black Power, going into Grease from the Elbows, which I think is like a more serious and moody track. But then that ends with the Billy Woods outro that's another like comedy sketch. And then we go right into Black Twitter, which is more upbeat, and Quelle raps with his brother Moselle, and I think that they have great chemistry. And we get right into Ritual with Dr. Tennille speaking, who I assume is one of Quelle's relatives, like his father or an uncle or cousin or somebody, like calling on his ancestors to bless him and just giving it all up to them. And then immediately after we get into Sudden Death, which is not consistent with theme like whatsoever. It's a very jarring experience, and it feels like a mixed bag for Quelle. And quite personally, I'm a little disappointed with this because of the way that Quelle was able to mesh his personality with serious subjects. This just feels so messy, and I don't understand like how it came to this, I guess.
It's like not the songs individually are messy, but it's as you package them together.
Exactly. As a complete package, this is really weird. Recently, my family bought these packages from Amazon. They're just like a big mixed bag, and you get a huge box with all sorts of like stuff in there. And each individual item is like fine, but as a package, you're getting like weighted blankets mixed in with sewing machines, mixed in with like bathing suits. And it's a very like messy experience. And that is what I would like in this too.
That is interesting. There's some like of his like best moments to date on here. Sacred Safe, Merle Garbus is amazing. Homeboy Sandman is incredible. Like the chemistry between all of them really works. Like I didn't think Merle Garbus is like, I don't know, like her idiosyncrasies and her like world music influence would really fit Quelle, but it really like
no, this was a very weird feature.
Yeah, like she goes more poppy on this, and it fits really, really well. Like she isn't in like eclectic like a lot of Tune Yours music is. Like she is pretty down to earth on this, and I don't know. I like mentioned Child Book like on Graphics Bleeds Out. Like I think she is that. Like she has like a storybook like character to her. But like moments like Sudden Death, which is a tonal change for Quelle and like the style of music he's making, like I think it works out as a success with his pitching, the incredible keys. Like this like soul track works out really, really well, talking about how life can be over in an instant and how you should just live it instead of worrying about it. I think it works if like other tracks on this blend thematically with it, but like other half of this track list doesn't. So it feels like this weird like track that kind of should almost remain a loose single because it just comes at a weird time.
Yeah, and I think it would be remiss to not talk about Mirage with these great. I love the block chord production, but Quelle, Earl, and Denmark Vesey. Just they really keep up with one another, trading bars back and forth. It's amazing, and they both have, or they all three have awesome verses here. I love Meryl's like really nasal tone in the background with these ad-libbed like just vocalises. And then finally Big Sen at the end. I really like his spoken word, but I think a little too much time was dedicated to him saying nothing.
The captivating thing about Big Sen's like spoken word outro is that it encapsulates what's wrong with this album, is that it's just a walking contradiction on how these themes really don't relate with each other. Because like first he's talking about how like in art, like we have this like constant fear of like the collapse of society and like how that comes through in his art, but like our artworks are mostly dystopian. And then he goes on and like you could just start a war by shutting the power off, and like the diabetes medicine in your fridge won't stay cold. How you almost gotta prep for this apocalypse by like getting closer with your ancestors, your roots, and then like getting in shape. And then that just transcends into him talking about you shouldn't worry about it and just live life, and he's gonna live his life and you gotta live yours, and like it doesn't matter. So I'm just like, none of these relate. These are three separate moments, and it's like over like 2 minutes, like it's a little bit over 2 minutes, I think, over this choir, how the drums cut out, which is nice, but it would have been nice for like 30 seconds. And I'm like, when the track ended, I'm like, oh, this would be good moment to close off the album on, even though like it has a bunch of contradictions. It like it's an end. And then we get to When You Fall, which has like 3 more features, and like none of them are terrible, but none of them make or break this album. And like while it has this nice message of getting up when you fall down, it doesn't end this album. And then we get into the credits, and we get some keys that sound pretty similar to Sudden Death, not really, but then we get this drums, so it's like the drums pop out of the end, so it leads up to like this is going to be the beginning of Innocent Country 3. At least that's what I assume, because I don't know why you would start something so close to the end, but it seems like it's leading to something. So this album truly doesn't end. It's not consistent thematically. The performances are good. Like there isn't a feature on here that ruins anything. Like I think they gave Big Sen too much time, but Vincent in those individual moments, like there's some points he has, but they don't work together.
I still find him captivating just based on his like speaking voice alone.
Yeah.
And I enjoy listening to him speak.
Yeah.
Even if he's not saying anything that I think is very potent.
Yeah. I just think like all the features he got on this, like they work, but there's just too much terrain being covered in here that it doesn't highlight all of it. This thing has like a first and a third act, but it doesn't have anything in the second. But it has a second act of a completely different story.
Yeah, I think overall the best way to describe this would be messy. I think that Quelle has some great performances. I do really like a lot of his features. I think Meryl Garbus being scattered throughout here was just a great choice. I think Quelle is still like funny, and I think his lyrics are still worth my time, and I still think that he can be absurd, but his thematic structure here is just all over the place. And while I will still return to like a lot of tracks on here, I still really like Sacred Safe or Black Twitter or Graphic Bleed Outs, Sudden Death, Mirage. Like there's some really great stuff on here. The album as a whole, I don't think is super well put together to the point that I would need to listen to all 1 hour and 3 minutes of this again.
Yeah, it's just very scattered in what it it's approached, and like both production on some moments, performance on others, thematically throughout the entire thing. Like it just doesn't highlight and accent itself to the fullest extent where it feels like a cohesive unit. It just seems like a bunch of loose ideas that have like similar production and performance on it, but they don't really play out the same way throughout. Keep in mind all scores are futile and meaningless right now. I think this is like a 7-. Quelle's done better. This is not terrible by any means, but I think it's just like the biggest thing is like Quelle has put out just 3 albums that are definitely better than this, and this is the weakest out of his discography thus far.
Yeah, and it almost feels like it sets apart as well. I think a 7 is appropriate, but for some reason this just doesn't feel like a Quelle project, and I'm sure that the next like solo Quelle project that he puts out will just be right in line with the other 3 that we have enjoyed so far.
And that's it for the review. If you want to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, you can find us at Anthony and Todd. You can find us youtube.com/The Anthony and Todd Show. And you can find us Podbean, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, and Spotify by searching The Anthony and Todd Show in your favorite podcast browser. Until next time, guys, I'm Vincent.
I'm Trevor.
And see you, boyos.
Bye, everybody.